Hello there, I'm David Bradley and welcome to episode 2 of Applied Theory. So this is episode 2, the 3 fundamental scales of Western music. So basically I'm going to be discussing what I consider to be the 3 basic scales of Western music in general. So they're a really good, really solid grounding point for learning all the others. And those 3 scales are in fact the natural minor scale, the harmonic minor scale and the melodic minor scale. Now I have a board of about 20 different variations of all these scales, but these are the 3 fundamental building blocks on which all of the scales are kind of either variations or built on top of. Now there's other forms of scales called pentatonics, which are 5-note scales, but these are diatonic scales, so that basically means I think roughly translates as 7-note scales. But we're going to start with the natural minor scale, but before we do, we need to get into the basic groundworks of how do you form scales and what are the intervals that make up scales, and that will be explained later on in the video, and then formula, how to quickly learn scales using intervals, and then because this will become really relevant throughout the rest of the series, and then we're going to look at the scale formula and the intervals contained within these 3 scales. So before we move on, it's relevant and pertinent to say that this here, the natural minor scale, is actually, and I do have another video which I'll link in the description, about the modes, right? But the natural minor scale is technically a mode of the major scale. It's the 6th mode of the major scale. But my theory on this is that the natural minor scale, harmonic minor scale, and melodic minor scale are the 3 basic scales, because they are the fundamental variations used in all of classical music. Now the major scale could be considered to be as important or a replacement for the natural minor scale, but because they're all minor and all have just 1-note variations, I thought it was particularly relevant that we choose natural minor over harmonic minor, over the major scale. So we need to look at scale formation, and then in particular to figure out how to form scales we need to learn the intervals on our bass. And then moving on from that, the next section will look at how to use these formula to learn the scales quickly using said intervals. So the first point we need to look at, here we have scale formation and the intervals. So my crude drawings here should hopefully be adequate to describe what I'm trying to show you. So we've got a root note here. So these are just the boxes. These represent, so for example, we start here. That is E, that is A, that is D, that is G, so these are your 4 strings. And the root is basically the same note. Now you could also use the root to apply to the octave, although I'm making a distinction there between the root and the octave, because root is technically a unison note. So it's the same note there. So that is, so if this was where my cursor is, that is your F sharp, or the 2nd fret, and then we're doing them all in F sharp. So we've got the root there, which is the same note. Then we've got minor 2nd, which is 1 semitone up. Major 2nd, 2 semitones. Minor 3rd, 3 semitones. Major 3rd, 4 semitones. Perfect 5th, 5 semitones, I believe. 4th, sorry. Perfect 4th, 5 semitones. Tritone, or a sharp 4 or flat 5, because it can be used to represent both, will be 6 semitones. 7 semitones will be the perfect 5th, augmented 5th or minor 6th. It's primarily a minor 6th in this case, but it can be used again like the tritone as a sharp 5 or flat 6. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 semitones. We've got 9 is the major 6, 10 is the minor 7, 11 is the major 7, and 12 will be the octave, because there's 12 notes in a chromatic scale. So if you want to take your time to sort of pause the video and look at this, it'd be extremely useful to you. But I'm just going to show you on the bass a good exercise for memorizing. And all you do, so say we're in F sharp, like in the diagram up here. That's our F sharp. So you go root, minor 2nd, major 2nd, and you go through, play the interval, and name each one with each note you play. It's also a handy fingering exercise for getting your string skipping tight. Whoops. So there you go. So they're all the intervals. And now what we can do once we've got a kind of idea of how to memorize all these intervals, we can then start to use these intervals to form scales. But if you look just quickly before we move on, next to minor second I've written flat 2 and 2 on major second, and so on and so forth. There's like a slash and then the number, and these numbers, whether it be flat 5 or sharp 5, all will be used in the scale formula. So we're going to kind of look at that now. So this is an example of the C major scale, and I'm throwing this in primarily because it can be used as one of the main 3 scales. It's often considered to be one of the main 3 scales, but I personally don't, because it's a major scale rather than a minor scale. But just to show the kind of example of how it works, if I drop out the bass here, we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That is, like in the previous video, the white notes on the piano. And then they're formed of root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh octave, and from these previous intervals. So as you can see, you've got second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh octave. So you can pause it now and look at that, but it is kind of written on the next page, which is, so the green notes are the octave or the root, and then the red notes are all the shape for the scale. So let's show you that on the bass. So we're just using this as an example of how to learn these formula. So we're on the 3rd fret here. So this is the 3rd fret because that's your open A string. This is just 0. So we start here on C, and then major second, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th octave. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Can't do it backwards. I don't know my solfege well enough. Let's tune my bass too. But that's the C major scale anyway. 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 4, 5. And that's kind of the pattern. So I just want to point out quickly that with these notes and these intervals, if you start on the E string from any position, those intervals are the same. If you start on the A string, those intervals are still called the same thing. You can start on the D, but you'd have to move up the neck kind of incrementally across, horizontally down the neck to get the extra notes. But I just thought I'd point that out quickly before moving on. Flat 7th octave. And there's the grid that sort of shows you what that looks like. Let's grab the bass again. And we're in C again, so we're looking at C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. That's not, it wouldn't necessarily be toned that way, but because we're using flats in the formula, I'm saying them as flats. But so the pattern is C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. So it's so that's our natural minor scale. Now compare that to harmonic minor, which is basically essentially the same scale but with a major 7 there. Oh, didn't mean to move that. But with the 7 as a major 7, so that would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. It's got that. Oh, can't hear the bass for some reason. I'll plug it in for the next one. But yeah, that's our basic scale. C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B, C. Hope you can hear that nice enough. And then the next and final scale is melodic minor, and all we're doing now is we're taking the 6th here and making that major as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sorry, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6th, 7th octave. Now if you were doing classical music, you would go up and then melodic minor and down, harmonic minor, but sorry, melodic minor, but we're looking at jazz melodic minor here, so I probably should have added the word jazz, but you get the idea. Root, second, flat third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, octave. And they're basically the three fundamental scales. So once you've got these memorized, so this is the page to look at. If I emphasize anything, you need to look at this, because it's so common, especially on the internet or in tablature or in general, for people to refer to these. And these will become relevant when we're looking at the formation of scales, chords as well, which will be coming in a future episode. So what have we covered? We've got scale formation and the intervals, how to quickly form them. We've got all three scales covered. And this, as brief as it has been, hopefully it's accessible and understandable, but if not, please feel free to leave questions in the comments. I've been David Bradley, aka Dr. B, and this is episode 2, the fundamental scales of Western music.